Mr. Pop. Eat.
They don't want you to know what's going on, because if you did, you would rebel, you would fight back. What I present is not good news. It will shock some and anger many, but it is necessary to help the past, present, and future victims of an agency which has ripped families apart for decades. I'm talking about Child Protective Services, and I was one of their foot soldiers as a CPS investigator. Presently, there are over 400,000 children in out-of-home care and in the protection of this organization, and therefore I find it imperative to come out and expose the truth about what they are in order to atone for my sins. As an investigator, I was guilty of working for an organization that has hampered freedom throughout the United States and has caused millions of parents to live in fear. I was guilty of working for an agency that has done more to carry out the war on drugs than the war against child abuse. I'm guilty for working for an agency that was directly funded more for every child that was taken from a parent, that treated children as a product that was abused physically, sexually, and emotionally. I'm guilty of working for Child Protective Services.
CPS. Do you know what it stands for? Child Protective Services. However, history shows that they do, proverbially speaking, not stand for this. They do not stand for children. They do not stand for protection, and they do not stand for service. They stand for corruption, they stand for profit, and they stand for secrecy. This is Senator Nancy Schaefer.
But tonight, I'm talking about those children removed from their homes intentionally for profit. Children are seized unnecessarily from their families due to the federal aid created in 1974 entitled the Adoption and Safe Families Act. It offers financial incentives to the states that increase adoption numbers. To receive the adoption incentives or bonuses, local CPS must have more children. They must have more merchandise to sell. Funding is available when a child is placed in a foster home with strangers or placed in a mental health facility and medicated, usually against the parents' wishes. Parents are victimized by the system that makes a profit for holding children longer and bonuses for not returning children to their parents.
She was an American politician and a conservative activist who served in the Georgia State Senate from 2004 to 2008. She spent her 4 years and beyond of her professional career investigating corruption within the Child Protective Services, and her findings were shocking. As she put it, the CPS changed from a civil service to a corrupt business when Bill Clinton signed the Adoption and Safe Families Act in 1997, an act originally conceptualized by Hillary Clinton that does not only encourage with financial incentives, but technically legalizes the abduction and sales of young children. The Child Protective Service is now a multi-billion-dollar industry that profits of the abduction, exploitation, and sale of children. This may seem like a conspiracy theory, but it isn't. This is a fact. Through her many years of research, Nancy had come to the following conclusions. 1. That poor parents oftentimes are targeted to lose their children because they do not have the wherewithal to hire lawyers to fight the system. Being poor does not mean you are not a good parent, or that you do not love your child, or that your child should be removed and placed with strangers. 2. That all parents are capable of making mistakes, and that making a mistake does not mean your children are always to be removed from the home. Even if the home is not perfect, it is home, and that's where a child is the safest and where he or she wants to be, with family. 3. that caseworkers and social workers are oftentimes guilty of fraud. They withhold evidence, they fabricate evidence, and they seek to terminate parental rights. However, when charges are made against them, the charges are ignored. 4. That the separation of families is growing as a business because of the local governments having grown accustomed to having taxpayers' dollars to balance their ever-expanding budgets. 5. That Child Protective Services and Juvenile Court can always hide behind a confidentiality clause in order to protect their decisions and keep their funds flowing. There should be open records and court watchers. Look who is being paid. There are state employees, lawyers, court investigators, court personnel, and judges. There are psychologists and psychiatrists, counselors, caseworkers, therapists, foster parents, adoptive parents, and others. All are looking to the children in the state custody to provide job security. Parents do not realize that the social workers are the glue that holds the system together, that funds the court, the child's attorney, and the multiple other jobs including DFCF's attorney. 6. That the Adoption and the Safe Families Act, set in motion by Bill Clinton, offered cash bonuses to the states for every child they adopted out of foster care. In order to receive the adoption incentive bonuses, local child protective services need more children. They must have merchandise, or in other words, children that sell, and you must have plenty of them so the buyer can choose. Some counties are known to give a $4,000 bonus for each child adopted and an additional $2,000 for a special needs child. 7. That there is double dipping. The funding continues as long as the child is out of the home. When a child in foster care is placed with a new family, then adoption bonus funds are available. When a child is placed in a mental health facility and is on 16 drugs per day, like 2 children of a constituent of mine, more funds are involved. 8. That there is no financial resources and no real drive to unite a family and help keep them together. 9. That the policy manual is considered the last word for DFCS. However, it is too long, too confusing, poorly written, and does not take the law into consideration. 10. That if the lives of children were improved by removing them from their homes, there might be a greater need for protective services. But today, all children are not always safer. Children of whom I'm aware have been raped and impregnated in foster care, and the head of the Foster Parents Association in my district was recently arrested because of child molestation. These were just some of the controversial findings she concluded in her report, and it is pretty concerning if it is true. A service that is put in place to protect children and families is literally ripping them apart.
DCFS is trying to take us away from my mom again, and they already did before. We had to live with my grandma. We had to live with my grandma after my dad died, and my grandma, her name was Marilyn Cooper. Her name is Marilyn Cooper, and she abused us, and she made me want to kill myself over and over again. And I told Child Protective Services she's abusing me, and they didn't care. And it took them an entire year before they sent us to foster care to get us away from my grandma. Because they didn't care, they want to get us away from my mom. I had been sad and depressed for 5 years because of Child Protective Services, because of what they did. They took away my childhood, like literally, like I was 8 when all this started. And my family needs to stay together. You don't know what it's like, unless it's happened to you, to have Child Protective Services come in and turn your life upside down. Yesterday we went to court, and I was informed that they're going to try and take us away from my mom again because she tested positive for a test. She's not doing drugs. I'm with her all the time, and I'm not just some kid defending my mom. This is the truth, okay?
Meet Claire Cooper, a young girl who was forcefully removed from her loving mother after the death of her biological father. At the age of 8, she was placed in the care of her grandmother, which Claire claims to be abusive. Despite outcry for help, her wishes are ignored for 2 years while the mother fights to win custody of her own daughter. Claire says that this ordeal has cost her her childhood and traumatized her to the point of depression and made her feel suicidal. When you take a small glance at this case, it doesn't seem extreme. But if you know the motives behind the actions, you will realize that, in the most basic form, this is human trafficking. Why would they offer foster care to a grandmother? Is it because they actually care for her and wanted to be with relatives? No, that is not the case at all. Albeit being in the care of relatives, you are still in foster care. This means that the state is the legal guardian of the child. The grandparent has physical custody, but the state retains what's called legal custody. That's the right to make major decisions regarding the welfare of the child. Grandparents may take care of the child without much oversight or assistance from the state, and this is sometimes called informal kinship care. In other states, grandparents may have to go through the training and certification required to officially become foster parents. CPS benefits from this. For the child to remain in temporary custody of relatives, they must attend courses, which, in some states, the grandparents have to pay for. Also, it's not common for CPS to pay the foster parents if they are the child's grandparents. And when they do, the average is about $350 per month across all states. That's especially absurd considering the child's legal guardian is still the state, which means that all medical and educational decisions that are supposedly made in the best interest of the child are made by the CPS personnel. If the child remains in foster care for more than 12 months, then he or she officially becomes a part of the system, giving CPS or the state full custody of the child. This means they can give the child up for adoption without the consent of the parents. Family caregivers often spend a large portion of their income, not to mention their savings, to care for their loved ones. You might even be taking unpaid leave or feel forced to quit your job to fulfill your family obligation. Family caregivers who quit their jobs lose out not only on a paycheck, but on retirement plans, pension plans, and social security benefits. Family caregivers are saving insurance companies and government agencies billions of dollars by providing care. Shouldn't there be a way to get paid something? As we saw in Nancy's report, the CPS receive handsome incentives for abducting children from their homes and keeping them in foster care. And only a tiny percentage of that money actually goes into providing care for the child. If the abduction and profiteering of children really is a multi-billion-dollar industry, then we should see CPS use ruthless means to win custody of children. Claire claims that the CPS caseworkers deliberately lied in courts and even provided fake evidence to illegally abduct her. Just how common is this?
They're sending CPS to my kid's school because, I've never had an issue with CPS. My daughter's 6. I consume cannabis for my treatment because I'm terminally ill. And so they're sending CPS to my kid's school because I smoke cannabis. They assumed my RSO, which is the whole plant oil, is heroin. Rather than checking it, they go, it's hospital property, so we can't check it. But fuck you, we're gonna go check your kid's well-being. My kid is in school right now. So they just admitted me to psych because I flipped out on the fucking cop. And so, I'm gonna be admitted for 3 days or whatever it is. And it's not right to assume. They have test kits. Test it. I can prove I don't have heroin. Why are you treating me like I'm a fucking addict when I'm not? I'm obviously here because I'm in distress and I have a broken sternum. And you're going to tell me I'm a heroin addict?
This is Natalie Hodges. They searched her bag, claimed that she was in possession of heroin, despite the fact she had proof that it wasn't. She tested positive for cannabis, and the police refused to acknowledge the fact that this was a health medication prescription. She was taking plant extract oil. She got aggravated and called the cop out for having a bad attitude. The cop swore to make her life worse, arrested her, then admitted her to a psychiatric clinic for 3 days. The cop then called the CPS and had her child abducted from school. She was pregnant during this and was avoiding taking medication that could harm her baby. That is why she opted to take the cannabis extract oil instead of Zofran during her first trimester. According to many sources, including the Birth Injury Guide, Zofran can and has caused birth defects such as fetal growth restriction and even death. But they confiscated the cannabis extract oil and forced her to take Zofran. The CPS will ask law enforcers to constantly survey and harass you so they can get dirt on you. They will ignore real evidence and facts, and at times completely fabricate evidence and make stories up to speed along the process of getting a court order to abduct your children. The Rembers family had their kids abducted twice, and the first time was at gunpoint. When the youngest kids of the family snuck outside into the front yard, a CPS personnel that had been surveilling the family for quite some time, to the point where she had taken lots of pictures of the children and even trespassed to spy on the family, immediately filed a form stating that the children were in immediate danger and must be removed from the family. Not knowing that they were under investigation by the CPS, the family went out of town to visit a friend. When the CPS arrived at the Rembers house to abduct the children, they discovered they weren't there and filed a missing persons case and accused the parents of kidnapping their own children. They were greeted by a SWAT team and their children were taken away from them. After getting custody of his kids back, the CPS personnel continuously probed around their property and spying on the family in hopes to find something they could use against them. But they couldn't find anything, so they fabricated evidence to get another court order to abduct their children. Perjury, fabricated reports, and evidence. The CPS worker claimed that the home was too dirty for the kids to live in, and that he left the kids in the custody of two strangers who happened to be babysitters. This was enough for the judge to sign the court order to have his children abducted from him.
I do.
Barbecue sauce on everything.
I
All lies. All lies. You can see the house is not dirty.
Okay. Well, I would
Okay.
definitely
Yes
suggest
or
you
no?
calling-
Yes or no?
I would definitely suggest you calling.
Yes or no? Yes or no? The house is clean or the house is dirty?
I would definitely suggest you calling your attorney first thing
Okay.
in the morning.
The kids
or
were left
tonight.
with a babysitter who was old enough to watch them. 2 of them, in fact.
Okay.
Yes or no? Okay.
Well, I'm just not going to sit here and fight and argue with you.
Okay, well, you'll hear about it in court.
That's right.
I can file my own ex parte motion.
Okay, that's perfect.
You know? This is not in the kids' best interest. You realize that, right? Taking kids away from their parents. They've never been away from us before. They've never been away from home.
Well, I'm not going to
Okay,
continue to
that's your
argue with
answer.
you about in front of your children. I'm not going to continue to argue. The judge signed the order, so that's just where we are right now.
Yeah, the judge signed the order based on no evidence whatsoever. So,
Before I go on, let's take a look at these social workers. The only qualification you need to be a CPS caseworker is a bachelor's degree, and it doesn't even need to be in social work. It can be something stupid like gender studies. That's about 2 years of college max. I said something about perjury, didn't I? I did. A lot of people claim that CPS caseworkers flat out lie to kidnap your children. But hey, that's illegal, isn't it? There is a chance they can get caught for that.
Jerry Murphy pleaded guilty to falsifying documents, admitting she filed paperwork filled with untruths about investigations involving children. Among the more disturbing cases listed in her indictment, the sexual abuse of a 3-year-old by their biological father.
The court has reviewed all information associated with this case and frankly is disturbed by the nature of the actions or non-actions that were taken.
According to a witness from the Cabinet of Health and Family Services, because Murphy either never investigated abuse claims or lied, the physical and sexual abuse of children in these cases went on for lengths of time.
The fact that these children could be left in the hands of possible abusers is particularly disturbing to this court. To grant probation would to diminish the serious nature of those offenses, and I'm going to deny the motion for probation.
Murphy appeared to be surprised she was denied probation. She was sentenced to 5 years and taken into custody.
5 years, no parole, seems about right for defamation, slander, and attempted child abduction. Getting caught for this could be a problem for the CPS. But to be caught, this would need to go to the Supreme Court. But unfortunately, the CPS target low-income earning families, and they can't necessarily afford a lawyer. But fortunately, somebody has taken them to court before. Hardwick versus Rican. The panel affirmed the district court's denial on summary judgment of absolute qualified immunity to social workers who plaintiff alleged maliciously used perjured testimony and fabricated evidence to secure plaintiff's removal from her mother, and that this abuse of state power violated her 4th and 14th Amendment constitutional right to a familial relationship with her mother. The panel held that the social workers were not entitled to absolute immunity from claims that they maliciously used perjured testimony and fabricated evidence to secure plaintiff's removal. The plaintiff held that the plaintiff's complaint targeted conduct well outside of the social workers' legitimate role as quasi-prosecutorial advocates in presenting the case. The panel held that the defendant's case for qualified immunity was not supported by the law or the record. The panel determined that the plaintiff produced more than sufficient admissible evidence to create genuine dispute as to whether her removal from her mother's custody violated her constitutional rights. The panel further stated that it could not conceive of circumstances in which social workers would not know and understand that they could not use criminal behavior in any court setting to interfere with persons' fundamental constitutional liberty interest.
What isn't clearly established here?
The fact that what Costanza says. What's not been clearly established in the year 2000 when this removal occurred was the idea that the right to be free from deliberately fabricated evidence in civil child abuse proceedings that result in the deprivation of a protected liberty interest, the same liberty interest that's at issue.
But it's not the same liberty interest because this was a parental liberty interest.
It's a biological versus foster parent.
That's huge. That's gigantic in terms of what somebody could appreciate and understand. How in the world could a person in the position of, we have to take the facts as they're pleaded in the light most favorable, so, we're not trying the case. But how could a person in the shoes of your clients possibly believe that it was appropriate to use perjury and false evidence in order to impair somebody's liberty interest in the continued care, custody, and control of that person's children? How could they possibly not be on notice that you can't do that?
I understand the...
How could that possibly be?
I understand the argument that it seems to be common sense and our ethical...
It's more than common sense. It's statutes that prohibit perjury and submission of false evidence in court cases.
State statutes.
Are you telling me that a person in your client's shoes couldn't understand you can't commit perjury in a court proceeding in order to take somebody's children away?
Of course not, Your Honor.
Of course not.
Then isn't the case over then?
And the case is over.
That is the CPS defending their so-called right to use perjured testimony and fabricated evidence. If this isn't proof that the abduction of the children isn't about the children's best interest, I don't know what is. But regardless of law, CPS truly believe that their perjured testimonies and fabricated evidence and bullshit opinion on the quality of living of your family is enough to act alone and take away your children.
You guys just said the judge did not sign off on it. He did not sign off on it. His signature is not even on it.
Can you do me a favor?
The judge means nothing. I'm looking right at the sheet.
No, the judge means nothing. Can you read these first couple of lines? Can you read them out loud? Read them out loud.
Notice of emergency removal. This is an official notice by who? The DCPP.
Okay.
Child Protective Services.
Continue reading.
What else am I reading?
Continue
Notice
reading.
of emergency removal pursuant to NJSA 96829 and 9683 without court order. This is without court order. You guys came here and said this is a court order. You guys lied from the very beginning. Did y'all not?
This is based, okay? There will be a court order generated based off of this emergency order. When the child gets taken from DC...
You're trying to take my child to get a court order when you don't have a court order now.
We're arguing semantics at this point?
No, we're not arguing semantics. You said you had a court order and this was it.
This is what's going to happen, okay? We're taking the child.
So you're saying you're going to take our child from us?
The police department is not. The state of New Jersey is. And then you will have court...
But you're the one. So you're going to take my son from my wife.
We are not leaving until that child gets placed in those two women's
So you're going to take my son out of my wife's hands and take him. That's what you're saying you're going to do.
The CPS arrived with armed police escorts to abduct this man's child with false paperwork, despite countless efforts of arguing that the paperwork is not official and no judge has signed it. Both the CPS caseworkers and the police insist on removing the child from the home. The letter of emergency removal is only signed by the caseworker and the police department, and they argue that they do not need a court order to abduct his child. The caseworker even admits that the judge will make it legal after the abduction of the child by saying that he has agreed to sign the paperwork but just hasn't gotten around to it.
That's what y'all are hoping that my wife just gives them to the CPS. We're telling you that that is not lawful. We're not giving our child to the CPS.
It is lawful. We're telling you it's not.
It's not human for us just to rip the child out of the baby's hands. That's why we're trying to talk to you. And
No. You're trying to find a slick way for us to hand our son over.
No one's trying to do anything slickly or backdoor.
Listen,
nothing like that at all.
I know you're.
None of us chose to come here today. We're here because we have to be here. Look, it sucks. What do you think? What do you think you're going to accomplish here? We're telling you. Bottom line, the baby's leaving today.
All I'm saying to you guys is that y'all handed me this paperwork saying that this was a court order by a judge. On the paper it says it's not a court order. This is not. The point is active. There is no judge. There is no judge who has given a court order to come here from Maryland or New Jersey.
You're going about it the wrong way.
No, y'all are going about it wrong. Y'all are trying to convince me. Because you're coercing me. Or if you're telling me. So you're going to take my child from my wife.
I'm not taking it from your wife.
Because you know you can't. You know you can't. Oh, okay. Well, then I got you.
But me as a human being, I'm not going to do that.
I promise you that is proper documentation.
You talk about what is proper documentation?
What you're holding in your hand.
CPS gives you papers like this all the time about coming to court in 2 ways. Man, you talk about they don't make stuff up. I've been dealing with them the last year. I've seen them make things up.
You don't know what we've been through. You know what they've said we've been through.
So can I speak to you, please? So you're saying that a judge has already signed off on this?
The judge has signed off on a document that we can provide and make the decision.
So you don't have a judge's signature. So what judge was this who said that they were doing that?
Judge, I think his last name is Odo.
What's his first name?
Not sure.
Later, the police threatened to charge him for the obstruction of justice and arrest him if he does not comply and hand over his son. The paperwork isn't legal, justice is not being served. He had not been to court to decide whether the state gets custody of his child. The CPS just decided that his child should be removed using unsupported evidence, and that was enough. Nancy Schaefer did say that the CPS specifically target low-income families because they cannot afford the legal fees for fighting for the custody of their own children. Once the child is in the custody of the state, then it becomes his obligation to seek legal aid, and he must pay the legal fees, not the CPS, not the state, but the poor family. They know that without substantial physical evidence, the judge will side with the family. Even the police admitted that, and that is why they are desperate to trick the man into giving them the child, because then it becomes a lot harder for the man to win custody of his child again. Unfortunately, they successfully abducted this man's child. The CPS do not care about children's best interest. They care about the money they can make from abducting your child. They will stop at nothing. They will even use violent measures that can harm the child to remove it from its home.
Okay. There. So, now, they've got the 5-year-old still beside the car, and you can hear him. He's screaming, "I want my mommy, I want my mommy." And because he refused to leave with the 2 social workers that showed up to take him, basically they called the police. So Chavez, I believe was the officer's name, who was sitting on him in the back seat of the car, because the 5-year-old little boy, again, the 5-year-old little boy wants his mommy. He wants to stay home, but they don't allow that. This is what they do. And then they'll take this 5-year-old little boy and they'll go shove him in a psych ward because they've already began the process of drugging him up. Now, mind you, this is on the orders. Oh, now we've got an ambulance. So the 5-year-old is absolutely going to a psych ward. Just because he wants his mommy. Let me see if I can, there we go. So he's just holding him up by his shoulders. And this is the best interest of the child. That's what this is, guys.
This 5-year-old boy is traumatized for life. They are supposed to be acting in the best interest of the child. The majority of children that get abducted by CPS are far more likely to just disappear, be abused, raped, or even murdered. Kids come out of the system damaged, a lot worse than just simply coming from a poor home. This is a fact that the CPS is well aware of, but completely ignore because it's not in their best interest. This is Ashley Harris,
who was stolen by CPS
around a little over 4 years ago. And we're doing an update, and Ashley is here to share the experiences with her case, which is JD 20223. Corruption in Santa Clara County. Ashley, could you share with the people what has been happening with you?
Well, lately they've been just putting me in hospitals to keep me quiet because I was old enough to know what to talk about, and that they were lying to me. In the beginning, they always wanted me to lie for them, but I refused to, and they were trying to adopt me out so they could get money. So I wrote a letter stating that I will not be adopted and that they may not change my name. That's when the lies started happening. So, they've pretty much got my brother because he believed their lies, but I'm speaking against them and exposing what they have done. Not very long ago, they sent me to St. Helena's mental health facility for youth, and it was very provocative, very explicit what they did. It was that they took away all my rights, and they would state that juveniles in the facility have no rights. They told me I had no rights. When they took me in on the ambulance, they were wheeling me in, and they told me that they were going to take all my clothes off. I told them they had no permission to do that. So they took drugs, which some people call booty juice, and they injected it into me and made me sedated. But I was still half awake. They took all my clothes off of me and strapped me down to bed naked. They put a catheter in me, and they would not feed me. They hooked me up to an IV. And anytime I would ask them, they wouldn't listen to me. They kept me in a room with cameras in it, but if we were to expose this, they'd probably cut the film out. Somebody saw this though. Her name was Amelia. She was in the same unit as me, and I knew her from past experiences being there. Amelia saw them through the window what they were doing to me because she saw me come in, and she peeked to see if I was there, and she saw 2 male mental health workers and a female nurse taking off my clothes and tying me to a bed while I was screaming. And when I was out of the solitary confinement, or quiet room is what they call it, she was telling me what they were doing, and they told us we cannot talk in group. The next morning they sent her to LA.
Booty juice, according to the DEA, is MDMA mixed with liquid. MDMA is also known as ecstasy. Why the hell would they inject little children with ecstasy? According to Health Direct, Australian government website, MDMA is an illicit drug which can give users a euphoric rush after swallowing it. It has serious side effects, especially if it's taken in hot and humid environment. Long-term use can lead to severe depression and memory problems. Depression and memory problems? Feel great while they do terrible things to you, then forget it later, and blame your messed up memories, or at least what's left of them, on depression. Sounds about right. Also, ecstasy is a drug that sexual predators commonly use to sedate and seduce underage kids. The DEA's list of names used to describe MDMA are quite disturbing and share themes with pedophilia. Baby slits, bean, blue kisses, booty juice, candy, chocolate chips, Kleenex, love doctor, love drug, love potion number 9, love trip, Skittle, Smarties, speed for lovers, and sweets. This drug is often given to unknowing children disguised as candy. It is a rape drug. On MDMA, your standards are significantly lowered. The euphoric feeling creates a false sense of love and trust. It boosts the libido and therefore is considered to be a very dangerous drug. One young woman recalls being spiked with ecstasy and being taken advantage of by a much older man. She writes, "I went out with a friend one night to have a few drinks. I was 19 at the time, and there was this older guy in a suit that kept talking to me. He slipped something into my drink and I didn't notice. I ended up making out with him, and he wanted to take me behind the bar. Later, when the drug started wearing off, I realized that I had been spiked with ecstasy. I wasn't at all attracted to the older man, and I thought he was kind of scary, but the ecstasy lowered my standards and made me trust the guy somehow."
Ashley, in closing, should what happened to your parents, to you, and to your brother, and, well, even your older sister, should this have happened the way it did in this country you live in?
The fact that this was all based off of lies, this shouldn't have happened if these lies weren't said. But even if those lies were said, I should have been at my parents' less than 3 months before we went into the system, because they did complete their classes and they did everything the court said they needed to do in order to get me my siblings back.
This terrible story is about a girl who was abducted from her family and separated from her siblings. She was abused by her CPS caseworker, and when she reported it, she was sent to a psych ward, drugged and sexually abused. The girl who witnessed the systematic child abuse of Ashley was immediately transferred to another clinic in another state and never heard from again. Ashley's parents, Scotty and Francine, continued to fight for the custody of their daughter, and despite complying with all the rules and meeting all the requirements, she was never returned to them.
And I'm sitting here with Scotty Harris and Francine Stevens, and we're discussing corruption within Santa Clara County, court system, county council, Department of Social Services across the board. Can you guys state the case number for the audience?
An email from Ellen B. Pascal details the terrible counts of perjury, fabricated evidence, deceit, and abuse by the CPS and the abduction of their 3 children, Ashley, Linda, and Skylar. The purpose of this email is to appeal to a small but mighty group of people who, if they choose to collaborate, even briefly, can positively impact the grotesque CPS epidemic that appears to be aimed at all of our children. I suggest we consider one family in particular, that of Scotty Harris and Francine Stevens, and for the reasons that I will explain below. The email contains a Facebook quote from Ashley's father, begging for help. "My children were stolen from my house on July 3rd, 2010. The children's names are Linda, Ashley, and Skylar. They were stolen by Judge Catherine Lucero of Santa Clara County, California. When the police came 2 days prior on a first attempt, they left because the oldest daughter was not successful at trashing a room and getting her siblings to hit each other, so she could claim one or both of the parents were responsible. On July 3rd, she made sure to add a few things and lied to the police, including convincing her sister and brother to lie. Later, I would hear my daughter Ashley whisper to me that Linda did all of this and Linda was responsible. I called for them to return my children because I was not charged or arrested for anything. I had no priors, I had no probation, I did not do anything. A man named Joshua refused my demands to return my children on that day. Joshua was in authority at a secret satellite shelter for children. Judge Lucero would not release my children to me. My wife was pressured to plead no contest by a public defender named Jessica. The courts took all visitation away as a part of their agenda. My wife completed everything asked of her to have the children returned. The courts refused to honor their own rules and accepted lies from their social worker, Anthony Nakru Okra, who, when asked on the stand about why, answered, "I was told to do this by my supervisor and I didn't read the paperwork that was completed." The woman that refused to give the completed papers to my wife was successfully sued in a small claims court and found guilty. Sally Dannenberg was ordered to hand over all completion paperwork. Dannenberg has not complied with the courts and is in civil court to move forward in a few months. My children could be your children or children of someone you know. What would you do? Christmas number 4 without my children, without my family, and still nobody helps or cares. Because it's not them. My children are attempting suicide and having troubles because no one will listen to them about what really happened. They are being told to be quiet or they will be punished for telling the truth. Sadly, a short time after the interview, Ashley disappeared without a trace. These are undeniable facts and evidence to prove that CPS are actually abducting children and technically selling them for profit. But is there evidence out there that actually links CPS to pedophile rings?
My name's Deborah K. Grant. I'm from San Diego, California.
I was harmed in San Jose, California when I was living up there. I had worked at a junior college and met someone who was a math professor there. We married and then had 3 kids, 3 children, 1 daughter and 2 sons. And I was his 3rd wife, and I understand he's married a 4th time or divorcing a 4th time, I don't know. But in any event, he sort of disappeared out of the scene after we got divorced. He made himself a deal with a protection racket for pedophile dads in Santa Clara County Family Court here in California that caused us a lot of harm. The children and me. They basically pressure the mothers to capitulate to not saying anything about a pedophile ring up there, and they tell you that pedophilia has been around a long time and all of these things, excuses, but you just have to do what's right, and the right thing is to say no. It's not okay to do that to a child. It's not okay for organized networks of people to do that to children. Anyway, so I was teaching elementary school, but I came home from work early one day and about an hour early, and walked into our house and didn't expect anything unusual. I don't think my ex-husband was expecting me home early. Walked in didn't see anybody, walked into the bathroom and found him molesting our daughter in the tub. He had my daughter's 5-year-old hand on his penis, his erect penis. And he saw me, jumped out of the tub, ran past me, and later told me that if I divorced him, I'd be putting a gun to my head. But he cut himself a deal with the family court attorneys up there for pedophile dads, and they completely seek to decimate the injured. Well, they'll decimate mothers and children if they have a paying pedophile dad who has the money to buy himself protection through the system. I did not understand that the system is able to operate extra constitutionally as a protection racket system that aids criminals or criminal behavior. I didn't understand that. I was expecting to find a constitutional system in place that would be, and the rule of law, where we would get protection, and that's not what happened.
Deborah Grant caught her husband sexually molesting her 5-year-old daughter. When she divorced him, she had to fight for the custody of her own child, and lost. The CPS and the family court ruled in the favor of the pedophile, and the CPS workers would taunt her and mock her. Her husband is wealthy and is protected by the state. He outright bought custody of the girl he molested.
Nothing I did there could get the people in the who hold judgeships to enforce the law. They refused to, and basically they told me outside the court that I had to go along with what they wanted, and actually law enforcement came and said, you need to pay these people. I paid into the network of people as best I could through the attorneys, which hiring my attorney, but he ended up working for my ex-husband, and I've been petitioning for redress because I figured that's the only way to get out of the situation. Because I'm not going to capitulate to saying that it was okay for them to kidnap my children and destroy their childhoods as they did. You know, and I wanted to say, when I was up in San Jose, in Barnes & Noble bookstore, for example, this is one way the perps operated, was some men would come in and I'd be reading in someplace. They'd wait till I was kind of secluded, alone, and maybe a gentleman would come and sit next to me and say, well, you know, how do you feel about the fact that we're causing your daughter to be sexually molested? As her mother, does that make you upset? Does it make you angry? You know, how does that make you feel?
Again, a clear-cut case of the CPS acting in their best interest, not the child's. They abducted the girl and sold her to a pedophile that had already abused her.
I lost a case against a pedophile. David Yomtov is the pedophile's attorney, and he has been using the House Sale Proceeds Trust Fund in order to pay off judges, my own attorney, and few people up at the DA's office. This is unacceptable. No wonder I lost the case. David Yomtov must be punished. No attorney should be using the trust fund of House Sale Proceeds to pay off people in order to win the case, especially a child molestation case.
Another alleged case of the family court and the CPS giving custody of a child to a pedophile. And what was the motive? Money. Profit. This woman accused attorney David A. Yomtov for using trust fund money to pay off judges and the CPS to help the pedophile win custody. Child custody. When parents split up, their children often suffer more than the parents do. child custody decisions are supposed to be about protecting the best interest of the child. Unfortunately, many parents think that the custody means ownership, and too often, children are caught in the middle of their parents' disagreements. This is what's written on David's official website: best interest of the child. Yet this man allegedly used dirty tactics to fight to give custody of a young girl to a registered sex offender and a pedophile, because that is definitely in the best interest of the child. It is a little strange that the last 3 cases I mentioned of the CPS and family court corruption happened in the same state, in the same county, Santa Clara, California, and involved the same people. Judge Brian Walsh, County Executive Jeff Smith, Detective David Carroll, Judge Socrates Peter Manukian. Perjury, fabricated evidence, bribes, corruption. A simple Google search on any of these people will bring up a hell of a lot of dirt. And this is just a handful of cases in just one county. This kind of corruption is common throughout the United States of America. According to a report, CPS takes an estimated 650,000 to 1 million children from their homes, playgrounds, schools, hospitals, and parents a year, and only about 6% or less were in any real danger or high-risk environments. The more children in foster care, the more money a local CPS agency receives from the federal government, with funds distributed throughout the community. Funding recipients include teachers, attorneys, doctors, judges, therapists, caseworkers, foster parents, coaches, sub-agencies such as Family First and Head Start, insurance companies, consultants, outside contractors, and watchdog agencies, just to name a few.
When you're with a pimp, they name you. Each one names you a different name. You can't say my name is Tina. My name's not Tina. I don't even pick my name. They pick your name for you. They say your name is Sunshine. One of my names was Sunshine. They pick your name. So each one renames you. Very similar to slavery when they named them and made them call themselves a different name.
I didn't have a choice. Did I want to eat? Did I want to pay my rent? Did I want to be able to get transportation in the city? I'm selling my body for money so I could take a bus. You know, that doesn't sound like a choice.
She lost her glasses several days into her trafficking situation, and her prescription was quite strong, so she couldn't see who was coming in the room to have sex with her.
People are judging you, so you can't go to them because they're talking about you. They think this is a choice. So now I have to pretend that this is what I want to do. Now I have to say, I don't care. It's just about the money. I have to make up these things to fit in so you won't think bad about me. So what does that do to someone's mental state? Well, you lose hope. I think when we think about sex trafficking in DC, all our minds go internationally at first, or it goes to the posters that we've seen with people with their hands up, with barcodes on the ground, a misinterpretation of what trafficking actually is.
Trafficking occurs when youth exchange anything of value for sex. So it could be a cell phone, it could be a ride, it could be a place to sleep, it could be drugs.
Under the federal law, any minor engaged in a commercial sex act is considered a victim of human trafficking. And so, most often that looks like children being exploited through the system of prostitution, but it's not limited to that. So when you see young people who are being exploited in strip clubs, through pornography, through massage parlors, all of that constitutes sex trafficking, child sex trafficking under the law.
So some people may not be aware, but there are 4 paradigms of sex trafficking: family control, survival sex, gang control, and pimp control.
Families who may sexually exploit children within the family
sometimes parents or extended relatives, as a means of supporting a family need. Addiction may play a role in that.
Familial exploitation, I think, works because children rely on their families to have their needs met, and their families are often the most important people in their lives. And so if your family member has expressed to you that, I need you to do this so that we can pay the rent, or I need you to do this so that we can buy your sister's medicine, things like that make it really difficult for the child to feel like, A, that they would tell anybody that it's happening, and B, like there's any other option that the family has.
A current case that's up right now of a young girl that we have that's 10 years old, and it was definitely her mother. And she was selling her on the street and online on Instagram as well. Did the people know her age? Well, they knew that she was 10 years old knowingly, and it was the mother who would make the dates for her. So that is definitely family-controlled situation. She was removed from her home, and the mother is being charged.
And it is especially difficult, I think, for kids to feel like there's a way out, because if they do report anything to anyone, kids kind of know a bit about what might happen if they raise information to an authority or even to a teacher who would likely call an authority. And for that child, the worst case scenario might be being removed from their home.
I think the level of betrayal in those particular cases that the youth feels is profound, to be trafficked by a family member.
We don't want youth to live in a world where they're already so used to their body being violated, perhaps by a loved one or family member or a teacher, that it doesn't feel so strange to then actually be in a position where they're using survival sex to get needs met. Because survival sex, it might sound confusing, but for some youth, they feel more sense of control engaging in survival sex than staying at home and experiencing serial rape by a loved one. And sometimes those feel like the options that kids have.
Survival sex, which is where they don't have a trafficker necessarily, but they have a buyer who's willing to exploit their vulnerabilities, and instead of maybe providing them with money, is instead providing them with food or shelter.
Survival sex essentially is any sort of a sexual act that people would participate in order to get their needs met. So, for example, I have a client who she's 20, and she has a child. And at various points during her time in foster care, she hasn't felt comfortable staying where she was supposed to stay. She didn't feel like she had a way to feed herself or her son. So she'd find herself in situations where she might sleep with someone to make sure that she and her son had somewhere to stay that night.
Your environment is not giving you a stable place to live. Your environment is not giving you food and clothing. Your environment is lacking. And so while you don't have a trafficker who may hit you with hangers or lock you in a closet, you're having to still survive through the exchange of sex for money. And you know what's worse? Is that the community looks at you with a different lens. If you were considered having been trafficked, you were a victim. If you engaged in survival sex or have been environmentally trafficked, you did it on your own. You wanted that life. And it's so unfortunate that the community does not often see the victimization that individuals who engage in that lifestyle go through every day or went through prior to having to enter that life.
People have a rescue fantasy with youth who've been trafficked, that you're going to identify them, you're going to rescue them, and their life is going to be better. I think it's really important to meet youth where they are, and to understand that they may not think or recognize that they're being trafficked right now. And my job is just to make sure that you're safe and healthy. My job is to minimize any risks to your health and safety right now. And so I'm going to address all of that and also recognize your autonomy.
I think most people want to know, how long does it take to get a good place? It took me 10 years to get out of the life. So I don't think that we should expect a person who's 9 or 10 to be done completely out the life when they get services at 15 for 6 months. This is a long-term process to change a whole entire mindset. So rescuing a person isn't really a rescue if you rescue a body and not the mind.
The guy at the top that helped create Toy Story, Lasseter, is leaving Pixar and Disney because of groping multiple employees.
Prospector, how about you? And so you two are absolutely identical? You know, I'm sure I could get you a part in Toy Story 3.
Now this goes deep because we just decoded Toy Story 1 and showed you scenes from that film that seem to indicate sexual overtones throughout the film.
I'm sorry, are we back? Oh, all right, girls. Lovely talking with you. Yes, anytime you'd like some tips on acting, I'd be glad to chat with you.
Now when I go to a kid's movie to show my kids, I don't want to show them subliminal sexual overtones. Apparently that's very hard for people to grasp their head around. In fact, many people think that this is acceptable and okay because it's the adult part of the entertainment, while the adults have to sit through some of these movies. But this goes beyond innocent sexual suggestions, and this goes deeper into child trafficking, and that's what I'm going to show you now. Now, Woody starts out being abducted, kidnapped, and then trafficked on the black market to a toy dealer. He's imprisoned. There are cages, boxes, dark places. This is exactly what happens to trafficked children. Jesse does not want to go back into the dark. Then they photograph these kids. They distribute these photos out on the black market. This isn't all in our heads. This is some sick undertones and subliminal messaging that was incorporated into this film by a person who obviously has a sexual problem. If you're bold enough to be doing this to your employees, then you're bold enough to put subliminal messaging like this in films. Binding. These kids are bound, tortured. They're comparing Lasseter to Weinstein. It's all about the money and the trafficking of these kids. Let's look deeper into this film because there are many more symbols that we've already identified.
We've been detected. The walls, they're closing in. Quick, help me prop up Vegetable Man or we're done for. Put me down, you moron.
Kidding. I say we stack ourselves up, push the intercom, and pretend we're delivering a pizza.
How about a ham sandwich with fries and a hot dog?
So anyone? Go, go, go! I got it.
So obviously Mr. Potato Head is a vegetable, and they want you to know that he's a vegetable. In fact, Kate Bush liked to dance on squashed fruits and vegetables in her music video. And then also dance on the skulls of children. That video was age restricted because I exposed it. They know that children are vegetables. That's why there's a movie that's supposed to get some kind of award called My Life is a Zucchini, about a child, an abused child.
My name is Zucchini.
Zucchini. Did your mother give you that name?
They know that children represent vegetables. And children also represent pizza. And that's why the vegetable keeps talking about pizza. Let's move on. There are other symbols that repeat.
And Barb Brady, your wife called. She wants you to get some pizza on the way home.
It's him, the chicken man. Funny.
Okay, people, move along. There's nothing to see here.
He doesn't look like poultry. That's the kidnapper, all right.
What's the trouble? Where's the body?
Barb Brady, I just caught some guy in here having sex with one of my chickens.
It's the chicken man! That's our guy.
Oh.
My God, that's disgusting.
Whoa, dude, how do you have sex with a chicken?
I knew there was something I didn't like about that chicken.
Yeah, I'll be right there. And we'll...
Boys, you move along. This isn't for young eyes to see. Did you get a good look at the suspect?
No, I didn't see anything. It just happened so fast.
I'm gonna do this commercial in one take, do you hear me? Because I am in the middle of something really important.
It says, sorry I had sex with a chicken. I won't do it again. Bye-bye.
You, my little cowboy friend, are gonna make me big bucks.
Today, if you saw somebody chained to a post, you would do something about it. But in the days of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a normal sight to see. It isn't as clear today of what modern slavery looks like, but by knowing the signs of human trafficking, you can help protect yourself and you can help protect others. Traffickers would often brand their victims with tattoos using words such as daddy or cash. Trafficking victims may show sudden changes of dress and behavior. They may suddenly have possessions that they usually can't afford. They may have unusually long work hours. Victims may have new relationships with boyfriends or girlfriends that are noticeably older, and I'm not talking about a few years. Difficulty with making eye contact, especially with men. Victims may have untreated medical problems such as cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones. They may miss school frequently, make frequent trips. Victims may be unable to speak independently. Other people may insist on answering questions for them, or even translating for them. Victims may even be frightened of authorities, seeing them as the bad guys. To request help or report possible human trafficking incidents, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-3737-888, or text info or help at BeFree 233-733.